Welcome to the fourth session in our Brightspace Assessment PD series. In this session, we're going to answer the question, how do I use Brightspace to evaluate and provide feedback? So this session will be all about evaluating your students' work, whether it's an assignment, a quiz, a discussion post, portfolio item, and then also reporting that and providing feedback to them. The first place that we're going to look is in assignments. So if we go into our assignments, and then pick an assignment that a student has submitted already. For example, in Untitled here, I believe Pam has submitted something. Oh, nope, it's Toby. So Toby submitted something here. So if we click on Toby's name, it's going to take us to a screen that shows us all of his submissions or files that he submitted with this submission. And we'll click on the file that we want to look at. So notice that this is a docx file or a Microsoft Word file. These files could be anything. They could be pictures, they could be text files, things like that, but anything will render really well here. Most files will render very, very well in this viewer here. So the first thing we want to look at is actually the annotation tools where we can actually mark up this file. So that's one of the really useful things about having assignments done here in Brightspace is that we can just mark up this just like we had a pen and a piece of paper in front of us like we normally do it. So right now we could go ahead and annotate it, but I'm going to click on these four arrows, which will actually toggle full screen. All right, now that we're in the full screen view, we can take a look at all the tools and options we have to mark up this document. So if you want to zoom in or zoom out, you can use these right here. If you want to move the document around, you can choose the hand tool, things like that. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And over here, we have the options for marking up this document. So we'll start with this drawing tool. This is just like having a pen in your hand. And if you click on the down arrow, it's almost like a freeform highlighter and a text highlighter as well. We'll show you those and an eraser. So if we click on the drawing, pardon me. So if we click on the drawing tool, notice all of the options show up here. So we can just draw on this document, circle something to show Toby, just like any feedback that we have, just like we had a red pen in our hand. We can change things like opacities. You notice right now, if we draw on it, you can see the letters come through underneath. If I go like that and make it 100%, we can't do that. If I make it somewhere around 50%, it looks a lot lighter. You can change things like that. You can change the color. You can also change some other options here. These aren't, you're not going to use these a lot, but if you go through and play with those, there's some really interesting ones in there. Anyway, so that's how you use the pen tool. So now let's say you drew something you don't want. We're just going to click on that eraser and we can just go ahead and erase it. Now, if we look at the freeform highlighter, it's just that. It just means we're going to be able to highlight anything in any way that we want. So if I wanted to highlight that, we could do that. Again, with the same options of changing the color and all of those other things. But the text highlighter is really interesting because what it does is it actually recognizes text, like typed text. So if we have that set to green right now and we start highlighting, it actually recognizes where the text is and just highlights the text. So that's great if someone's typing or submitting something that's a typed item, you can use that text highlighter. So those are the basic ways that you can use the drawing tools in order to mark up your document for your students. This is called the note option here. It's really interesting because we can choose the color of our note, and there's a lot of other options here, but I'll show you the basic one right now. So if we just decide to put a note here, we could type the note and say, this sentence doesn't really answer my question or something like that. You can type a lot of feedback in there, but the interesting thing is that when the student sees it, they're just going to see that. So it's not going to be these big notes everywhere, but when they mouse over it, they're going to see your feedback. So you can put all these sticky notes everywhere with some really specific feedback, but it's not going to take up space unless the student mouses over it. Again, there's lots of options there. You can play around with those, but that's the basic functionality of that. You can do a text box as well, where you can type yourself, and they'll be able to see that show up. You could do a line if you wanted to do straight lines, or you can do an arrow. or a rectangle, right? And you can also do a rectangle with fill, right? So there's lots of different drawing tools that you have available to you in order to provide this feedback. Again, it's just like you have a piece of paper in front of you with a pen, but there's actually some more options here. But the nice part is it's a super quick way to do it, and then you can instantly share that feedback with your student. So a lot of times as a math teacher, I would have students submit work by just writing on a piece of paper at home, take a picture of it, send that in, and then I could just mark it up like I had that piece of paper in front of me. It works really, really well for math. So now that's the annotation stuff. So if we come over to this side, here we have another place for feedback. So say you just wanted to type feedback in general about the whole assignment. You could just say, hey, Toby, why are you the way that you are? Little office reference there. But Toby would then see that. You can use this. This is just a rich text editor like you would see anywhere else. Like if you're creating an announcement or something or content, you'd see the same thing. So if you wanted to include audio or video in your feedback, you could do that here. If I record audio or video here, they're going to show up as attachments. So if I decide to record video, I would just create a new recording here, and I would just go new recording. Hey, Toby, looked at your work, don't really like it, try again. Obviously, we try to be a little more encouraging than that, but just to show the point that you would have a video attached. So if we go stop recording, new recording. Hey, Toby, looked at your work, don't really like it. It will just give you play it back so you can look at it and then just go add. And now that shows up as an attachment for Toby. The same would happen if you did audio. It would just do a new recording, except you'd only do audio. So they show up as attachments down there, and we'll take a look at what Toby sees when you do that. Up here, you can add an image. If you go to this plus sign, you'll see all these insert things. You could insert an equation or table if you wanted, but right here, you could insert an image if you wanted to, or in insert stuff. This is another place that you could do a video. So if we added a video note here, it would show up the same way as that attachment video, except it wouldn't be attached anymore. It would actually be embedded right in the feedback. This video would now be embedded. You can see that it shows right up there in the feedback. So there's lots of really cool ways that you can provide feedbacks to your students. And then again, the nicest part is with one click of a button, all of that feedback is going to be shared with them. All right, you don't have to re-upload any files. You don't have to do anything like that. So notice we've already shared this feedback with Toby. We've done that in a previous video. So we have this update option. So if I click update, it's now going to update that and it's been shared with Toby. If we want to retract the feedback that we've given him already, we can just click retract and it's been retracted. And now it's a draft. All right, and we can edit that and save the draft. And then when we want to publish it again, we would just click on publish. And now Toby can see it again. So now if Toby wanted to view the feedback that I just provided for him, there are two ways he could do it. He could go into the assignments tool and he could see that in this assignment, he now has unread feedback. If he clicks on that, so here you can see we have the overall feedback with that video that we embedded. Any expectations, we showed that in a previous video that we evaluated there. This attached file is that video file that we recorded. Any audio or video files that we recorded as attachments show up here. And then down here, this original work is what he submitted. View inline feedback, if he clicks on that, he's then going to see all of those annotations that we provided. So he'll be able to go through and take a look at all of those annotations. And again, if he hovers over the notes, he'll be able to see what feedback was provided in each note. So it's very, very useful for providing feedback. Now, the other place that Toby can provide feedback, and probably the recommended way, because you can see all feedback here, is if Toby clicks on his name and goes to progress. So he can see things like progress, content, expectations, things like that. We'll talk about more of those later. But right now, if we go down to assignments, we can come down to the assignments portion here. See the untitled assignment. If we click on details, we're going to see all of that feedback right here. Okay, so it's really useful to be able to see all of your feedback in one place. So you could see all your feedback for quizzes and things like that as well here, and we'll show you that a little bit later in the video. Now let's take a look at what this looks like for a quiz. Now let's talk about quizzes and what that looks like. Now in order to talk about quizzes, I'm quickly going to go into this Office quiz and I'm going to edit it. And I'm going to go to assessment. So if right here we see this automatic grade, if we check this and it allows attempt to be set as graded immediately upon completion, what that means is any questions that can be auto graded, things like true or false, multiple choice, fill in the blanks, it will automatically grade your students based on the answers that you provided when you created those questions. The problem is for things like written questions or written response questions where they can't be auto graded, it's going to automatically give them a mark of 0. So for example, if there was a written question that was worth 5 marks, if it's auto graded, it's going to give them a mark of 0 on that until you actually go in and grade it yourself, because you're actually going to have to go in and read that written response. So because that this wasn't set as automatic grade when we started, if you leave it like that, you'll have to manually go in and publish the grades. Whereas if it was set to automatic grade, then any questions that couldn't be auto graded would be marked as 0. And sometimes students kind of freak out when they submit a quiz, instantly get a mark back, and it's low because some of those questions haven't even been graded yet. So just be careful of that when you're using the auto grade option. So because we had that auto grade option checked, someone has submitted a quiz and it was automatically published and auto graded. So if we go to the Office quiz, click on that down arrow and go grade, we will see that Dwight has actually submitted a quiz and he got a mark of 3 out of 14. So if we go and take a look at that attempt, we can see why that grade was 3 out of 14. Right? We had a true false, a multiple choice, a fill in the blank, a short answer. And we also had a written response. So notice this written response was out of 10. So a value of 0 was assigned because it's not auto-graded. So in he wrote this essay about why Michael chose to go to leave Dunder Mifflin. Now it's not a great essay, but let's say we wanted to give him 6 out of 10 on that. That would have been a 0 when he first submitted it, so he might have freaked out a little bit because he had such a low mark. So again, be really careful when you're setting that to auto-graded. And you might also have a situation where he put 6 strips of bacon, period, and 6 strips of bacon is clearly one of the answers. We can also override the auto-graded option there. Now, at the top, you're going to see something similar to the previous assignments option, where if we click here, for the attempt feedback, we can type in attempt feedback. And again, if we also wanted to insert an image or a video, we can insert using the insert stuff here or insert image. The difference from the assignments is there's no place for attaching an audio or video recording, but you can do the video through, again, the insert stuff here. So all of those things we can do to provide feedback for Dwight. If we wanted to provide specific question feedback, for example, down in this essay, we wanted to say, you know what, for this specific question, we wanted to say, this doesn't contain enough information or something. We could do that. Again, here we could record a video here if we wanted to, but let's update this feedback and publish it. Since it's already published, right? We just click update, and then it's the same thing as the assignments with the retract, update, and publish. If this hadn't been published, we would have seen publish there. But we go back, and now Dwight's going to see a mark that's been fully graded. So if you have one of those written assessment questions or long answer questions, I would advise not checking that auto grade until you've had a chance to go through and grade everything. Now, again, there are two places where Dwight could have gone or could go to view the feedback on this quiz. He could go to the quiz tool itself. The only problem is if that quiz is no longer available, he won't be able to get the feedback through there. So that's sometimes a problem. Students will say, I can't get my feedback because I don't see the quiz anymore. That's why we do advise clicking on your name, going to progress. So once we're on the progress page, we can go down to quizzes and he can see graded attempts and clicking on attempt one. Now notice the only thing he sees right now is his mark and anything that we typed in that feedback window. If we had recorded a video, it'd be there. We just typed attempt feedback, so that's what he sees. Now, sometimes you're going to want students to see what the correct answers were, what questions they got right and wrong, things like that. You can do that, and I'm going to show you how to do that now. So if we are back in quizzes as the teacher, we click on Office Quiz. We go to Submission Views. So there's a default submission view which really doesn't show anything but their mark and any of that feedback you had. If you wanted to add some more feedback options, like if you wanted to see a list of all the questions and things like that, you could either change the default view or add an additional view. I'm going to add an additional view here. Change it to, say, new view. You can do things like show questions. Yes, if I want to show all questions with user responses, we can do that. We could also show all questions with user responses and show the answers. Now, we could just show things they didn't answer. We could just show things they answered correctly, just show things they answered incorrectly. But now let's show them all the questions with all the answers. We could show them the scores. If you wanted to show class average or distribution, you could as well, but I'm just going to save that as a new view. Now, because we've already published this grade with a different view, in order for Dwight to see the new view, we just have to go in and unpublish or retract feedback, and then just publish it again. And now it's going to get published with that new view. If you had that new view set from the beginning, it would be the one that they see when they submit automatically. So when you first go into the quiz, before you allow students to do it, you can change that submission view right there, and then that's automatically what they're going to see. If you do it afterwards, you have to retract and then republish the feedback. So now when Dwight goes in and takes a look at his quiz feedback, he is going to be able to see all of the questions and what the right answers were. So again, you can kind of play around with whatever feedback that students get based on what that submission view is. And again, remember we added specific feedback for this question, and then you can get the specific feedback for that question as well. We're now going to look at how to assess discussions. So there are two ways to kind of go about assessing discussions. So first of all, notice that Pam has made a post in this topic. So we could click on this down arrow and go to assess topic. So if we want to assess how Pam did on that topic, we could just come down here, click on topic score, and give the assessment. Now, she's already been assessed here, but again, we could change things, or if she hadn't been assessed yet, this is where we would do it. And then notice down here, we have that same text editor window where we could add the videos or anything like that. And notice at the bottom, any posts she has in this thread will all be here, and we can assign them an individual mark. Remember before when we were setting up the assessment here, we could say how the topic score is generated, whether it's the highest mark on a post, lowest mark on a post, average of them, things like that. So that's one way that we could assess Pam. The other way we could do it is if we go back to the discussions list, click on the topic itself, and we would see Pam's, we could assess by posts. So for example, the first post, we could go to assess student here or assess student here. So depending on who made the post, we could assess that student. So here's all the posts. If Pam made that post, I go to assess student, it's going to take us here. And we could then assess it. So those are the two places. You could either click on the topic name itself or click on the down arrow beside the topic and then go assess there. Again, if Pam wanted to see the assessment for that discussion, we can just click on her name, go to progress. We can find discussions. She has 3 authored posts. She is going to see the evaluation on all of those posts. And then if we click on the discussions itself, we could see the topic, and then we get her evaluation on that topic. So here, remember, it was great work, Pam. Here are some additional suggestions. This is her mark on the topic that gets entered in the gradebook. And then these are the individual post scores. One more thing I wanted to remind you of, I know we talked about this in a previous video, but if you wanted to provide feedback on just a particular grade item, right? Let's say it wasn't even linked to something else, just a grade item that you've entered. You can, for example, click on the arrow beside the grade item, go enter grades. And any feedback you want to provide to a student, you could just type in right here, right? You could edit it and then type in the feedback. So we'll save that and close. So when Andy goes to view his progress and grades, he's going to see this. So right by that grade item, then he's going to get his feedback. Thank you so much for joining us for this session. Please stay tuned for our next session, which is going to drop next Tuesday, in which we answer the question, how do I use Brightspace to track mastery of expectations? Where we look at everything expectations and how to use them to track your students' progress. See you then.